Today we will be discussing the Filioque and the pneumatology of the great doctor and saint of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, Saint Hilary of Poitiers. Some interesting facts about Saint Hilary of Poitiers will be the following. He was a French bishop of the 4th century, a father and a doctor of the Church. He fought against Arianism, which denied Christ's placement within the Trinity. He suffered exile after confronting the bishops who wanted to validate Arianism. After returning to France, he defeated the heretics at the Synod of Paris by defending the divinity of Christ and the unity of the Trinity. He is the author of a treatise on the Trinity based on the Council of Nicaea. He also received a high education in Greek. Why is he important for the Orthodox faith? We will answer as follows. In Constantinople II of 553 AD in session 1, we are told that we must hold fast to the following fathers: Saint Athanasius, Saint Hilary, Saint Basil, Saint Gregory the Theologian, Gregory of Nyssa, Ambrose, Theophilus, John Chrysostom of Constantinople, Cyril, Augustine, Proclus, Leo, and their writings on the true faith. And one of the aforesaid mentioned fathers is Saint Hilary of Poitiers. Today, we will be examining the pneumatology of Saint Hilary of Poitiers. We will undertake to explain his pneumatology, that is, his belief of the Holy Spirit, in an orthodox way. We will likewise deal with apparent controversial quotes, often employed to prove the Latin doctrine of the Filioque from his writings. The first claim that we will be looking at is Saint Hilary allegedly affirming that the Son is the author of the Spirit. Saint Hilary of Poitiers, on the Trinity, Book 2, Section 29, says the following, quote, "Concerning the Holy Spirit, I ought not to be silent, and yet I have no need to speak. Still, for the sake of those who are in ignorance, I cannot refrain. There is no need to speak because we are bound to confess him, proceeding as he does from the Father and the Son. For my own part, I think it wrong to discuss the question of his existence." The Latin word used here is auctor, which in some translations renders as author. Now, if Saint Hilary of Poitiers is implying that the Son is the author of the Holy Spirit, that could potentially be supporting the Latin doctrine of the Filioque, but we will see why this is highly unlikely. Firstly, an Eastern Orthodox scholar, Adam Zornikov, in Tractate 3 in his Corruption 2 of the Latins on the text and the doctrine of the Holy Fathers, he says the following on Saint Hilary of Poitiers, quote, "Would after all so great a father have taught that there were more authors than one, and therefore also two principles, two causes of the Holy Spirit? This, surely, not even the Latins themselves will admit concerning so great a father. For the entire Catholic Church has always condemned with every anathema those who introduce two causes, two principles in divine things. Indeed, that, quote, author, quote, cause, and, quote, principle are the same in significance is acknowledged among all. And hence the Latins allow that there are two who produce the Holy Spirit, but not two producers and authors. And never, if Hilary had eschewed two authors or two causes and principles of the Holy Spirit, would he have been worthy to have been numbered by the Fifth Holy Ecumenical Synod in its third conference, among those fathers whom that Holy Synod bears witness that it followed, and from whom it took all the things which they expounded concerning the correct faith and the condemnation of heretics." End quote. On this same point, Edward Seczensky, in his book The Filioque, A History of a Doctrinal Controversy, says the following, quote, "In Book 2 of De Trinitate, for example, Hilary spoke of the Spirit, qua Patre et Filio octobodes confides est, which has been understood by generations of Latin writers as an endorsement of the Filioque. The problem is that while this text can be understood to mean that, quote, we are bound to confess him, proceeding as he does from the Father and Son, end quote, a better reading might be, quote, confess him on the evidence of the Father and the Son, end quote. And thus we see that translating St. Hilary's works in the manner that there are two authors of the Spirit is not only heretical, but also not the scholarly opinion on the correct translation of the text. The next claim that we will be dealing with is that the Spirit receives from the Son, and more particularly, essence. In a recently published work by Brian Duong, The Filioque Answering the Eastern Orthodox, He quotes from St. Hilary of Poitiers on the Trinity, Book 8, Section 20. This is a long quote, so I'm not going to read all of it. The main essence of this quote, as he highlights in bold, is that accordingly he receives from the Son, who is both sent by him and proceeds from the Father. Now I ask whether to receive from the Son is the same thing as to proceed from the Father. But if one believes that there is a difference between receiving from the Son and proceeding from the Father, surely to receive from the Son and to receive from the Father will be regarded as one and the same thing. Thereafter he goes to the next section, saying that which he will receive, whether it be will, power, or excellence, or teaching, the Son has said must be received from him. And again, he indicates that this same thing must be received from the Father. He teaches also that what is received from the Father is yet received from himself, because all things that the Father has are his. Now Duong conveniently does not quote the next part, which says, therefore the Spirit of truth shall receive of him, is to be referred to unity of nature, end quote. Now, to contextualize what Duong has just cited, he is essentially citing this, the first section of section 20 and the last section. But what he conveniently does not cite is the middle section. And this middle section is paramount, as you can read for yourself, but I will read the highlighted yellow piece, in which he explains, quote, for he shall receive of mine. For this points to some subsequent time, when it is revealed that he shall receive. To make this point easier to understand, let us consider the following quote that Duong has not cited from the same work. St. Hilary says, quote, that which he will receive, whether it will be power or excellence or teaching, the Son has said must be received from him. And again, he indicates that this same thing must be received from the Father. For when he says that all things whatsoever the Father has are his, and that for this cause he declared that it must be received from his own, he teaches also that which is received from the Father is yet received from himself, because all things that the Father has are his. Such a unity admits no difference, nor does it make any difference from whom that is received, which given by the Father is described as given by the Son. Is a mere unity of will brought forward here also? All things which the Father has are the Son's, and all things which the Son has are the Father's. For he himself says, and all mine are yours, and yours are mine. It is not yet the place to show why he spoke thus, for he shall receive of mine. For this points to some subsequent time, when it is revealed that he shall receive. Now at any rate he says that he will receive of himself, because all things that the Father had were his. Dissever, if you can, the unity of nature, and introduce some necessary unlikeness, through which the Son may not exist in unity of nature. For the Spirit of truth proceeds from the Father, and is sent from the Father by the Son. Now some people, such as Duong who wrote this book, will argue that, as he says, quote, in that very quote, he says what is received is power. Power is not received temporally, otherwise the Spirit would not be omnipotent for eternity, or from eternity. Thus the argument fails. What he means by subsequent time is that this manifestation of the eternal reception will take place in time. The Spirit eternally receives power from the Son, but the manifestation of this reception will take place at a subsequent time. Now, I would agree with Duong that the manifestation of the eternal giving of energies from the Son to the Spirit is manifested in time and place. The problem for Duong's interpretation is that it ends up admitting this power is manifested in creation, because that is what it means in a subsequent time to be manifested. For Duong, if the power which is manifested in creation is identical to the essence of God, then he contradicts all the fathers who say the essence remains beyond our reach and is outside of creation. For example, St. Basil the Great in letter 234, section 1 says, quote, the operations are various and the essence simple. But we say that we know our God from his operations, but do not undertake to approach near to his essence. His operations come down to us, but his essence remains beyond our reach, end quote. This clearly shows that Duong's interpretation that the receiving and giving from the Son to the Spirit, which he interprets as a pre-eternal act of procession, i.e., receiving the divine being from the Son given to the Spirit, is false. If, however, power in this context refers to energy, then St. Hilary can validly claim the Spirit receives power in a subsequent time from the Son, that is, the manifestation of the eternal act of God's power. Another relevant quote on this specific topic is St. Hilary of Poitiers on the Trinity 1239, where he says, quote, "For although things future, insofar as they are to be created, are still to be made, yet to God, with whom there is no new or sudden in creation, they have already been made, since there is a dispensation of times for their creation. And in the working of the divine power, they have already been made." End quote. The explanation of this is that St. Hilary asserts the creation of God is from and through the divine power. If the power of his nature is identical to his nature in the way Duong asserts, then creation is of the same nature as the Son, as it comes from or through his nature. Instead, Hilary agrees with Damascene, who says, quote, "For the creation, even though it originated later, is nevertheless not derived from the essence of God, but is brought into existence out of nothing by his will and power, and change does not touch God's nature. For generation means that the begetter produces out of his essence offspring similar in essence. But creation and making mean that the creator and maker produces from that which is external, and not out of his own essence, a creature of an absolutely dissimilar nature." End quote. Thus, the power of his nature is not identical to his nature, or at least not in the sense Duong interprets it to be. Therefore, Duong's exegesis on St. Hilary, Book 8, Section 20, is wrong. Now, to summarize what we have said so far, St. Hilary makes it clear that John 16:13-15 and the phrase, quote, "he will take of mine," or, quote, "from me," etc., is about a subsequent time when it is revealed that he shall receive, that is, in the future. Therefore, this passage does not denote a pre-eternal receiving of essence by the Father and or through the Son to the Spirit, but rather a reference to the economic manifestation of the Spirit's gifts, such as teaching, as Hilary himself says. If we interpret John 16:13-15 as referring to giving nature to the Spirit from the Son, then, by Hilary's interpretation that this refers to a future time, we either have to conclude the Spirit does not yet have his nature until this future time, which is blasphemous and reduces the Spirit to non-existent, or we must confess he receives his nature twice, which either makes the Spirit composite or imperfect prior to this future receiving, which again alike is impious and blasphemous. The context is economic, not a pre-eternal filioque. Moving on to the next claim and quote, is that the power of the Holy Spirit's nature subsists eternally through the Son. As St. Hilary of Poitiers says on the Trinity, Book 12, Section 55, quote, "I must also deny that this name of creature belongs to your Holy Spirit, seeing that he proceeds from you and is sent through him. So great is my reverence for everything that is yours. Your Holy Spirit, as the Apostle says, searches and knows your deep things, and as an intercessor for me speaks to you words I could not utter. And shall I express or rather dishonor by the title creature the power of his nature, which subsists eternally, derived from you through your only begotten? Nothing except what belongs to you penetrates into you, nor can the agency of a power foreign and strange to you measure the depth of your boundless majesty. To you belongs whatever enters into you, nor is anything strange to you, which dwells in you through its searching power." End quote. Now, to explain what it means that the power of his nature subsists eternally from the Father through the Son, we will briefly take a look at 2 points. The first point is that every action of God is triadic. St. Gregory of Nyssa on Not Three Gods says the following on this topic, quote, "Since then the Holy Trinity fulfills every operation in a manner similar to that of which I have spoken, not by separate action according to the number of the persons, but so that there is one motion and disposition of the good will, which is communicated from the Father through the Son to the Spirit. End quote. The second point is that God is always active. As St. Gregory Palamas says, quote, the essence of the Spirit is completely hidden, while the energy of the Divine Spirit manifested through its effects begins and ceases at the level of manifestation, without the creatures, as we have said, attaining to eternality. But the energy of God does not, for this reason, begin and cease unqualifiedly. For God, who is always active, has an unceasing energy, ever seeing all things and providing for all things. For my Father until now is working, and I am working. End quote. The explanation of what we have just covered will be the following. Because every action of God is triadic, that is, it subsists from the Father through the Son to the Spirit, as St. Gregory of Nyssa says. And secondly, God is pure act, or always active, as St. Palamas says. The power of the Spirit's nature is said to be eternally from, or subsisting, from the Father through the Son and given to the Spirit. This is why St. Gregory of Nyssa says the Spirit, quote, always receives of the Son, referring to energy. To quote St. Gregory of Nyssa on the Holy Spirit against the Macedonians, quote, he, that is the Spirit, ever searches the deep things of God, ever receives from the Son, ever is being sent and yet not separated, and being glorified, and yet he has always had glory. Now, to counter the Filioquist reading of this, before anyone thinks that this means that he receives essence from the Son because it says he receives glory, the same saint in the same work says that the Spirit does glorify the Father and the Son. You can argue this is economic, but the economia reflects the theology, that is, ad intra, and God is always glorifying himself. So this does not lead to a Filioque reading. The conclusion is thus from point 1 that every operation is triadic, that is, from the Father through the Son, or subsists through the Son and given to the Spirit. And point 2 that God is always active. It follows the activity or power that the Spirit receives in the ever active operation of God eternally subsists, or is through the Son, not his nature. Thus the expression that the power of his nature subsists eternally from the Father through the Son is orthodox. The next controversial point that we will be covering is St. Hilary of Poitiers' famous per filium formula, that in the Latin is through the Son. St. Hilary of Poitiers on the Trinity, Book 12, sections 56 to 57, says the following, quote, but I cannot describe him, whose pleas for me I cannot describe. As in the revelation that your only begotten was born of you before times eternal, when we cease to struggle with ambiguities of language and difficulties of thought, the one certainly of his birth remains. So I hold fast in my consciousness the truth that your Holy Spirit is from you and through him, although I cannot by my intellect comprehend it. Keep, I pray you, this is my pious faith, undefiled, and even till my spirit departs, grant that this may be the utterance of my convictions, so that I may ever hold fast that which I professed in the creed of my regeneration, when I was baptized in the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Let me, in short, adore you, our Father, and your Son together with you. Let me win the favor of your Holy Spirit, who is from you through your only begotten. End quote. The phrase, quote, the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father through the Son, end quote, can be explained in an orthodox manner. The first phrase on the procession of the Spirit, saying from the Father, according to Patriarch Gregory of Cyprus II, denotes the following. Cited from Edward Sczynski's book. Quote, thus, contra Becchus, Gregory argued that in the phrase from the Father through the Son, the first from denotes existence procession, while the second through denotes eternal manifestation and splendor, not existence procession. Thus, the section in the per filium formula that says from the Father denotes the Holy Spirit's receiving of being, essence, subsistence, and everything from the Father and coming into existence, whereas the second through the Son denotes, as Patriarch Gregory of Cyprus II says, through then denotes eternal manifestation in contradistinction to eternal procession. Therefore, the section through the Son denotes an eternal relation. Now at this point, before we move on, we have to first tackle a common misconception that is spreading online, perpetrated by people such as Erick Ybarra and especially Duong, that states that the Orthodox object and even anathematize the through the Son formula. To show that this claim is valid and that this is actually happening, I will briefly include a section from Erick Ybarra in which he said this on a stream, and I will include two sections of the video. The section I will not include is him merely explaining that the so-called processions the Orthodox accept is either a purely energetic one or a purely economic one.
People. However, a lot of people mistakenly believe that the Orthodox are okay with the Perfilium formula.
Hmm.
And and we have to make it very clear that the Orthodox are not okay with that, with Perfilium, as understood by the patristic and biblical tradition. It has to be said that the Orthodox historically have condemned the idea that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father through the Son.
Hmm.
Full stop. Just full stop. That's the Council of Blachernae, 1285. They said anybody who says that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, or from the Father through the Son, let them be anathema. Okay, so we have to understand what kind of perfilium.
This claim that the Orthodox do not accept the through the Son formula, or that Blachernae in 1285 condemned those who say he proceeds through the Son, is simply false. The Tumus of Blachernae of 1285, in point 5 of the 12 anathemas, says, quote, if the Holy Spirit's procession through the Son has been spoken of by certain of the saints, then the words through the Son herein are intended to signify the procession into eternal manifestation of the Spirit, who has existence from the Father, and not the procession into being as such. Thus, the Tumus of Blachernae does not anathematize or reject the formula through the Son. It merely explains it as being in reference to the eternal relation that the Son has to the Spirit, that is, that he shines forth from the Son and proceeds through him, i.e., eternal manifestation. Edward Sachensky summarizes the view of the Perfilium formula in Gregory of Cyprus II in the following manner. Quote, this schema allowed Gregory to establish an eternal relationship between the Son and the Spirit, without making the Son a cause, either immediate or proximate, of the Spirit's being. He was simultaneously able to uphold the monarchy of the Father as sole source and cause of the divinity, while allowing for an orthodox reading of the phrase "Daetor huio," that is, through the Son, formula as used by the Fathers, particularly those like Maximus the Confessor and John of Damascus, who had been employed by Becca's to support the Latin teaching. Now that we have had a look at St. Hilary of Poitiers and his various quotes on the procession of the Holy Spirit, we will move on to the conclusion. As Edward Sachensky summarizes in his book, quote, although later Latin theology regarded Hilary, especially in his frequent use of the Perfilium formula, e.g., who is from you, i.e. the Father, through the only begotten, as an advocate of the Filioque, it remains unclear whether Hilary himself would have accepted the teaching. While it is easy to see how Hilary's language later lent itself to the development of Filioquist thinking, the degree to which the great anti-Arian can be credited or blamed for this development is still open to debate. End quote. St. Hilary of Poitiers teaches, like the Orthodox Church, that the Holy Spirit eternally proceeds from the Father through the Son, and that he receives from the Son glory, power, love, etc., eternally, and also in the economy of salvation. Considering the fact that Hilary speaks of the Spirit as proceeding through the Son, as the Orthodox confess to this day, and his overall pneumatology, St. Hilary of Poitiers is indeed orthodox.